This message is brought to you by House on the Rock Fellowship. We're a church that serves and cares for the Miami Valley region in Ohio. Before you continue, make sure to access the notes from our download section of our message page and have your Bible ready. Thank you for being our guest.
To our guests, my name is Paul. I'm the pastor here at House on the Rock, and it means a lot that you've gathered with us. If you're watching online, thank you for being with us. I was reading a book in my chair not too long ago, actually. It was yesterday. I like to sit in my chair, and I like to read books. That's what I do, and I'm sitting here carefully, quietly, minding my own business in my household. And my lovely, amazing wife walks in, and I have my book, and I have my tea, and I'm in my chair. The washer is making funny sounds, and off she goes. See, I know what's supposed to happen next. I know what I am supposed to do. But I have my chair, and I have my book, and I have my tea. So I get up, and I make my way to the washer, as echoing in the back of my mind are words that have often been spoken about me and spoken to me, and I speak to myself. Paul, you can't fix anything. What are you going to do? You have no mechanical, marketable skills. If this pastor thing don't work out, man, you're done. And I go into the laundry room. It's a closet, has a washer and a dryer in it, and you can hear it. It's doing it's not a sound that I know that much. I'm like, yeah, that's. I'm like, this is bad. And so I sit there, and she's looking, and I'm trying to discern, and I listen, and I'm able to discern a couple things. It makes the sound sometimes and doesn't make the sound at other times. All right, cool. And then I start to think, well, the soccer season's coming to an end. My boys play a lot of turf ball. If you know anything about turf, the little turf pellets get all over the place in everything. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe said washer is jammed up full of turf guts. Because that would make me grumpy if you constantly fed me turf guts. They're not digestible. You can't do anything with them. I bet you, what if I, sounds real mechanical, what if I pulled out the trap and emptied the trap? That might do it. And then I could get back to reading my book. There's a problem with this particular model of washer. They don't want you to get to the trap. They know that you're supposed to, you need to, but cosmetically it wouldn't look great to have a nice access panel at the bottom of the washer. So you have one or two options. I know that because I also Googled everything. How to fix sound, washer. One guy's like, well, you don't want to go through the front because that's a nightmare, taking off the housing and the control panel and the chrome. And it's just real difficult to get to. It's a whole lot easier if you go through the back. And I'm like, well, I don't want to go through the back. That's where all the tubes and the water stuff is. And I'm not good at plumbing. And so if I can go about something without doing the plumbing part, I'm going to pick that part. And so I said, you know what? We're going through the front. And so I get some screws and I start, taking all the screws off that I could possibly find because I'm pretty sure that will make it easier. Less screws, the better. I took some off, nothing moved, so nudged it with a screwdriver here or there. Most of the tabs are still intact. And I got the housing off all the way down. And there's a particular challenge because this is a front loader. So there's this big rubber bonnet thing that goes from the drum to the housing, and so that water stays where it's supposed to, and then the door closes up against it. Well, I know I've got to get that big rubber gummy thing off. So there's this tension wire that's held by a spring that's probably put on by Hercules himself, which comes off really easily. All right, so we're at this. I get this off, I get this off, I get the door off, I get and I get down, and sure enough, there's the trap. I'm going to get back to my book. Piece of cake. I get the trap off. Lo and behold, what do I find? 55 cents, a silver cross, an 18-inch gold necklace. Money that had to be the... And so now I can get back to my chair, I can get back to my book, I can get back to my tea, and I get credit for fixing something. This is a good day. I put the trap back in, I wipe things down, I clean it up, I put that one housing part in, put the next housing part in, put the door back on, and now it's time to put that little gummy big rubber thing attached to the housing via Hercules armband, okay? Shouldn't be a problem. I watched a YouTube video. Took the guy 20 seconds. Piece of cake. I'll give myself 40 seconds just because I know I'm that guy. It's okay. 40 seconds pass trying to thread this Herculean armband that goes all the way around the door with the spring. And you get it this far, and guess what it does? And you get real close. Like it waits for you to get close. And then it just like, oh, watch this, big guy. 40 seconds turns into 4 minutes, turns into 10 minutes. I have to be very careful because I also have Jason Fleener in the house about 2 rooms away installing a fireplace. God forbid the pastor loses his stuff trying to fix a washer in the laundry room. Maybe there's something wrong with the spring. What if I took the spring off, then I put the band on, and then I just, stretch the spring to put it back into place so that it'll hold the gummy thing on the big round part that goes in the washer thing. So I try that. Doesn't work at all. And I can feel her getting close. And she probably has Mechanics Are Us on speed dial. She knows, she probably has a list of every mechanical guy in the church that we need. He's doing the thing again with the tools. Will you please come help? And she says, is it kind of like the time where you broke the trampoline because you couldn't get the springs on there? Just as she is saying this, I am trying to reapply the spring to the cable thing. And I snapped it. As I am snapping it, and she is echoing, and generations of pastors with no mechanical skills are mocking me in the back of my ears. And the words of my father, you can't fix anything, put it down. Is it like when you didn't fix the trampoline? And I'm like, I just broke it. Would you please give me space? And off she goes. I know in this moment I am on the cusp of, I talk about patience for a living. You pay me to do that. I'm supposed to know these things. I'm supposed to embody. You got to practice what you preach. So I call him for backup. Jackson, come on in, dude. And Jackson comes in and he takes some pliers and he's going to hold the cable here and hold the cable here while I try to snake the cable around with the giant, massive screwdriver. Because the bigger the tool is, the quicker it'll get into line, right? That's what I thought. Eventually, we try it 4 or 5 times, and now I have my son watching me. Does Dad talk about patience but not have patience? My wife, she's over there. Jason Fleener, he's probably laughing his head off. This is what he does for a living, man. It's like, let's see what the big guy does. It pops off again. And I'm like, Jackson, we're going to take a break for a little bit. okay, off he goes. And I go to my room, and she's just sitting there, speed dial, every guy with mechanical skills in the whole church, just ready to go in case I lose my mind. And I sit there and I'm like, eventually, I make my way in there. Jackson takes a wrench. Jackson takes a second wrench. Dad takes a wrench. Got a screwdriver. Lucas walks in. We give Lucas a wrench. It takes 3 of us to get this Herculean band over there. And it's on. Yeah, right? Like, and then we ran the clothes washer, and guess what happened? It did work. Thank you very much, Mr. Ward. Isn't it interesting? The battle for patience is a daily thing. It comes up everywhere and all the time. No wonder the early church fathers talked about patience so much. No wonder that the New Testament writers talked about patience so much. When God introduces himself on the mountain, I'm gracious, I'm merciful, I'm slow to anger, I'm patient. Jesus, the embodiment of patience. So we've been unpacking these last few weeks. What is patience? How important, how big deal is? And today, instead of talking about patience so much, we're going to talk about impatience. What is impatience? I've been giving you a biblical definition, trying to for the last few weeks. I'd like to bring it back up, please. This is something to write down in your notes, to grab a hold of as it gathers all the biblical ideas of patience all into one space. Our generous lifestyle of hope that's rooted in God's character reflects Christ. It draws others to faith. The person who is patient is this. They have a generous lifestyle of hope about them. They are generous with their time and their energy. They're generous with things like kindness and truth. They're generous with their godliness. They're generous with forgiveness because love is patient. The patient person is generous and going slow with others. It's a lifestyle. I'm patient sometimes. That means you're not patient. That's what that means. To say you're patient sometimes is to say you're not patient, that you don't endure through trials. It's rooted in God's character. This is who God is. God is a patient being. He's patient with creation. He's patient with you. He's patient with me. It reflects Christ. Christ who endured so much, patiently enduring the cross. Why? To draw others to faith. We choose patience so we don't put a barrier in front of others growing. If that's patience, could we then say that the opposite is impatience? That instead of a generous lifestyle, the impatient person is not a giver, they're a taker. They take peace. They take love. They create chaos. That's not a lifestyle of hope. It's a lifestyle of chaos that they cultivate, a lifestyle of crazy. That it's the opposite of God's character. It's the opposite of Christ. They don't reflect Christ. In impatient moments, we're reflecting the opposite of Christ. Instead of drawing people to faith, we're pushing them away from faith. It was such a stupid Herculean bracket that was holding that thing in place, but in that moment, I could have said things to my wife in a fit of rage, couldn't I? Any guys here ever do that? You're just trying to fix it. This was your idea in the first place. You could be reading my book. I could have snapped at my son. And then what type of man would I be standing in front of them this morning? Oh, you better be patient. I want to share an example of impatience with you today, and then how we can continue to foster patience in our lives. What you're going to find is much of the chaos that you practice, much of the chaos that you promote, much of the impatience that you live in, fuels an orchard of pain and suffering. If you find yourself battling things like rage or lust or gluttony or other impulse issues, judgmental spirits with others in the faith, If you are a church hopper that have gone from here to here to here, because every single place you go are Christians that just drain you and aren't following God, okay? Impatience is at the root. Impatience is at the root of it. Today, I want to share you a story that, well, to be honest, you live in its shadow today. You have encountered this story this week, the fruit of it. You saw it on the news. It popped up in your phone. It now, because one couple decided to not be patient, this consumes the entire earth in chaos and has touched all of us in very devastating ways. Turn to Genesis chapter 15 and Genesis chapter 16, please. Genesis 15 and Genesis 16. The Lord has come to a man named Abram to give him a promise that through Abram, God is going to raise up a great nation, and through that nation, transform the world. There's just one catch. Abram doesn't have any kids. Got no kids. God has a promise, but God hasn't given him any kids. So God comes to him, the Lord comes to him in Genesis chapter 15 to impart promise and also a plan. Oh, that's all we needed. Just needed a plan. Just needed a YouTube video. Now we can do it. Genesis chapter 15. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Fear not, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. I like rewards. Who wants rewards? Who doesn't like getting a star on the sheet after you do a good job? We all want stars. I want a reward. Abram said, O Lord, what will you give me? I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. Abram said, behold, you have given me no offspring. A member of my household will be my heir. Behold, the word of the Lord came to him. This man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir. And he brought him outside and said, look toward heaven. Number the stars if you're able. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted to him as righteous. God says, I'm making you a promise. It's going to blow your mind. Not going to be one kid. It's going to be an entire nation is going to come up. You can't even count. You can't even count. So great is my promise for you. Awesome. All right. The Lord makes a promise. And he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess. O Lord God, how will I know that I will possess it? He said to him, bring him a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, a young bird. What God's going to do is he's going to make a covenant promise. In our culture, you sit down and you sign a contract. You sign yours, awesome, you're bound together. In this culture, this is a way that they would bind a contract together, except this is an unconditional contract, meaning God's going to do this. It's not contingent upon Abram's performance. This is what God's going to do. As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram, verse 12. And behold, dreadful and great darkness fell upon him, verse 13. Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in the land that is not theirs. They'll be servants there. They'll be afflicted for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve. And afterwards they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your father's place, and you shall be buried in a good old age. They shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, a smoking fire pot, a flaming torch passed between the pieces of an animal. This is the way they sign a contract. And on that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham. This is what the Lord said, to your offspring I give this land. From the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, Rephaim, Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, the Jebusites. So it's not just that God has made him a promise, God also has a plan. I'm not just making you a promise. This is how I'm going to pull this off. This is what I'm going to do to accomplish this promise. You need to be mindful of something, Abram. It's going to come with pain. There is no plan without pain. There's other things, Abram, that I'm trying to work out, try to figure out that I need to accomplish, other geopolitical groups and nations that I'm trying to draw, that I'm bringing closer to me, that I'm communicating patience with. It's not just about you, Abraham. He talks about these other people groups that are in the land of Canaan. I also am working to draw them because I'm slow to anger and I'm abounding in steadfast love. This story ain't just about you, Abe. I need you to be patient. I need you to be calm. I'm making you a promise. Here's the plan. Yes, it's going to be hard. Stick with me. Sounds good. Got the YouTube video. Let's make it happen. Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said to Abram, "Behold, now the Lord has prevented me from children. Go into my servant. It may be that I shall obtain children by her." Here you go. God's made a promise, but it looks like he's going to need our help. I'm not quite sure how this plan thing's going to work out. And, we've tried for a while now, and you're getting older and I'm getting older. So maybe we need to take matters into our own hands. We're probably going to have to force fit this to make it happen. So, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't you take my servant, you rape her, and we'll have a kid through her. Maybe that's God's plan. No. What you see, language in this, is language that's designed to echo Genesis chapter 3, when Eve took the fruit and gave it to her husband. As you read this as an intelligent reader, you're supposed to see that and hear that story echoing in the background. Hey, how did it go for Adam and Eve when they did that thing? Did it work out when they were impatient? When they took matters into their own hands, did it go well? The story is setting us up for what's about to happen when we're not patient, when God makes a promise, but we follow our own path. Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan. Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her servant, gave her to Abram, her husband, his wife. And he went to Hagar, and she conceived. When she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. Look what I did. Sarai said to Abram, "May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge me between you and me." Abram's like, "This was your idea." Abram says to her, "Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please." Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled with her. Impatience always involves force. Impatience always involves force. God does not force anything to fit. The angel of the Lord found Hagar by a spring of water in the wilderness, a spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm fleeing from my mistress, Sarai." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her." The angel of the Lord also said to her, "I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are pregnant, you will bear a son, and you shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen." Who is the angel of the Lord speaking about in that moment? Who is this man who from forth a people will raise up that will be constantly warring against Abraham's other son? I guarantee you've watched the Middle East this last week. I guarantee you it's come up on your phone. That ageless battle, war, slaughter field is beheld in the prophetic word right there in Genesis. He will war against everybody, and everybody will war against him. When you look at the Middle East, why don't we have peace in the Middle East? There will not be peace in the Middle East until the king returns. As kinsmen fight against kinsmen because one man and one woman weren't patient. They just weren't patient. God made a promise. God had a plan. All they had to do was follow it. And what we see on a geopolitical level that dominates a 24-hour news cycle that has affected your life and every other life on the planet. The fruit of impatience. Your impatience in the home, my impatience at the home, can be just as disastrous as we lay waste to our spouse, to our kids, to our grandkids, to our neighbors, things that we say, things that we do. All in the name of our own kingdom. Destruction abounds. James says in James chapter 5, verse 9, go ahead and bring it up. We've been hanging out in James chapter 5, okay? Last week we talked a little bit about 10 verses 11. Next week we'll talk about verses 7, verses 8. He says this, do not grumble against one another. Don't be impatient with one another. Verses before, he says, be patient. Look to the farmer. See how he waits. Looks to the harvest. So it has this rain and this rain. Don't grumble. Don't be impatient. Grumbling. You know what grumbling is, right? Seriously, why can't you get his act together? Come on. We already talked about this. Come on. Didn't we? We've already. All right. Don't grumble with one another. Why? So that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door. There are many images of Christ that we behold and we love and we enjoy and we put on bumper stickers and coffee cups and we hang on posters on the wall and we're like, I love this Jesus. I love Shepherd Jesus. Shepherd Jesus makes me happy. Shepherd Jesus makes me feel good. I'm going through scary places and Shepherd Jesus is there. He holds my hand, and who can't do it without Shepherd Jesus? And we have a poster of Shepherd Jesus holding a little lamb, and he's really looks really Anglo for a Middle Eastern, but that's okay. Blonde hair and blue eyes. And we got gold filigree that says Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. I love Shepherd Jesus. Yes, he makes me happy. Or Passover lamb Jesus, who lays down his life and bleeds for me or picks up the cross. I love sacrificing Jesus. Yes, that's the Jesus I love. I want sacrificing Jesus. I guarantee you that there is a poster you do not have up in your house. There's a bumper sticker you do not own. There's a coffee cup that you do not drink out of that says this: Jesus will judge me. But he will. But he will. The judge stands at the door. So quit grumbling. Quit being impatient with each other. This is what the Apostle Paul is trying so hard to do when he's writing to this failure of a church in Corinth. They are constantly dividing and warring, constantly going against each other. I mean, here in the United States, we don't have to worry about that. We'll just go to another church. Right? I don't have to be patient with you. I'll just say you're living in sin, and I'll go to another church. Feel real good about myself. And then you'll stay at that church until what happens? Oh, you're living in sin. I'm going to go someplace else. Yeah. He anchors the sin of impatience within the community of faith. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul says this to the church that he's working with. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, let me read it for you. They're struggling with patience. They're struggling with grumbling with one another. And guess he brings them back to this theological truth, that the judge is standing at the door. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, starting in verse 10, according to the grace of God given to me, like a skilled master builder, I laid a foundation, and someone else is building upon it. This is where we got the branding and the titling for our catechism program, Foundations. It comes from this passage. We want to provide every follower of Jesus Christ a firm foundation because the storm's coming. Okay, the storm's coming. This is where it came from. Okay, let each one, take care how he builds. So the foundation is Christ, and you're building a life upon it. Kind of like a house on a... Whew. It's only been 9 years. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Look, this is now talking about you and me. If each one, builds on the foundation with gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, straw. Different types of building material. You can build with gold. You can build with things that last. You can build with things that don't last. Each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because it will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each one has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself will be saved, but only as through fire. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? Okay? You can build your life with a temporary focus for today's wants and today's comforts, or you can build in such a way that lasts. You can pursue the things that are for your own empire, or you can pursue the things that are for the kingdom. The difference between gold and hay, silver and straw. But know this, follower of Jesus, your life will be judged. I'm going to the happy place. I'm not going to be judged. We're not talking about eternal geography. Yes, there is that moment when the judge comes, and the dividing of the goats and the sheep, and the wheat and the tares. Those who have been allegiant to the gospel will enter into promise. Those who have rejected will enter into eternal rejection. That's true. But what you have to understand is that's not the only thing on the divine calendar. There is very much a moment when the believer comes before Christ and his life is judged. And those who lived according to the gospel will receive a reward. Those who lived contrary to the gospel, lived for themselves, lived for temporary purpose, lived in sinful, self-centered ways, they will lose, they will miss out. It says, this isn't about salvation. You're saved. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the echo of your life. This is why we teach the creed. To re-anchor beginner Christians in this truth. For I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, buried, descended to the dead. On the third day, he rose again. He ascended to heaven and sits at the right hand of God the Father Almighty, and will come again to judge the living and the dead. Follower of Christ, stop grumbling. The judge is standing at the door. Be generous with your life. Be generous with your time. Be generous with your energy. Be generous with your kindness. Be generous with truth. Be generous with godliness. Live a generous life like Christ did, like God is. Stop grumbling with each other. This means that when we step into glory, some of us will step into more reward and delight than others. When we step into glory, some of us will step into more delight and reward than others. Well, what's that mean? I don't know. But for me, it's enough to know that the test is coming. Okay? Let me offer 5 ways that we can battle impatience and wait better. And maybe you don't need these. Maybe you're the picture of patience. Awesome, great. These are for me, okay? Because sometimes things on the washer break, and, I got a family who's watching. And I've got a church who's, is he really gonna? Here's 5 things that I think would be very helpful. One of them is this: if we have to wait, knowing that the judge is at the door, wait wisely. Wait wisely. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths, what's the word, Jack? Straight. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. I'm not going to trust in how I value things. I'm not going to chase after what I think is important. I'm going to make sure I'm chasing after what God says is important. I'm going to build focused on his design and his purpose for me. I'm going to build in line with his blueprint and his path. Because he's going to evaluate. And if something that I am focusing on should lead me to impatience, hold on. What does Jesus say is a priority? Oh, okay. I guarantee you, many times we become impatient pursuing things that Jesus doesn't care about. There are many times we become impatient pursuing things that Jesus doesn't care about. Or there are more important things that we could be giving our energy towards. So let's wait wisely, with wisdom, saturating our hearts and minds with the things of God. Wait wisely. That was Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 and 6, if you want to write that down and look at it later, okay? Another way to wait is wait joyfully. Wait joyfully. Hebrews chapter 12, right after the writer gives a whole host of examples on those who are patient in the Lord, then has this to say, and these are verses that have kind of stuck in my spirit for a long time, and you'll often hear me say lines or parts from this. This is Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 to 2. Therefore, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, those who've lived their life well, those who followed promise and path, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely. Okay, let's live wisely. Let's build correctly. And run with endurance the race that's set before us. Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus put the cross before the crown. He could carry the cross because he knew there was coming a crown. That means there's joy. Doesn't mean I'm happy. It means I know the score, and I can live with joy. I can sing when others can't sing. I can celebrate when others can't celebrate, because yes, it hurts, and yes, it's hard, but there is a cross. Then comes the crown. No one running an Olympic race gets their crown and then runs the race. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. But we can have joy in the middle of pain, joy in the middle of hardship, because we've learned to live wisely and wait wisely. We know that some things matter and other things don't. My son's soccer season came to an end last night. Practicing and training and working since June. Since June. They've worked hard, they ran hard, and last night was the district finals. It was farther than any of them had ever gone in the soccer season. It was a delight for me as a dad. I had all three of them out on the field at the same time. It's never going to happen again. It was just complete joy. Complete joy, and they lost. It happens, right? You're going to lose. There's losing. The other side of the stadium, there was cheering and rejoicing and lots of delight and happy. They're going to go on and play a team and move on to regionals, but my sons were done. And there were lots of tears, sure. But I try to be one who sees things that others don't see. I try. And I noticed off to my side, my right, your left, where Lucas's goal was. Jackson gave his brother a big hug. And they kind of stood there for a while, each crying on each other's shoulder. And then they walked over, and Aiden joined them, and all three of them held on to each other for a while, crying on each other's shoulder. They'd lost. There's pain. There's great pain. But you see, I try to be a father that keeps a different score. And maybe when others saw a loss, this father, I saw a win. I saw a win. Waiting with joy. Waiting with joy. Family members in the midst of struggle and stress and pain, holding on to each other. Yeah. Waiting wisely, waiting joyfully, waiting humbly. Waiting humbly, meaning I'm going to put myself underneath God's plan. I'm going to submit to his plan. I'm going to submit to his way of doing things. In Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 3, Ephesians chapter 4, 1 through 3, if you're collecting verses to study later. Ephesians 4, 1 through 3, therefore, a prisoner of the Lord, I urge you, walk in a manner worthy of your calling to which you've been called. How? With all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Walk humbly. I don't know what's best. He knows what's best. And he says, I need to be patient. I need to wait. I got to work through this. And he's watching. He's watching. So I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to put other people in front of me. I'm going to make other people more important than myself. I'm going to make their growth my priority. I'm going to put God's will ahead of my will. I'm going to walk humbly. I'm going to walk prayerfully. Walk prayerfully. Back to Romans, if you're one, again, collecting passages. Here's just a thing, just trying to give you resources to reflect on. In Romans chapter 12, Paul is just kind of dumping all the theological ideas he can probably stick into one letter. He just has this passing thought in verse 12, Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, be constant in prayer. Notice how those three go together. Rejoice, joy in hope. Hope meaning there's promise, there's a path. Be patient in that tribulation, be constant in prayer. Because I don't have the answers. I wonder if things had been differently if when God had given the promise to Abraham and the plan to Abraham and his wife had come and said, hey, listen, maybe this is how we're supposed to pull this off. You rape my slave girl and we'll get a kid through her. Maybe if Abe had said, let me run that by God and see if he thinks that's the plan. Let's just, because it seems like there's a lot resting on this, what if we just run it by him? Hey, Yahweh, is your plan that we rape my wife's slave and then get a kid through her? Yeah, thanks for asking. Hard pass. There was no prayer. There was no petition. There was no seeking. There was no asking. I'm in the midst of suffering and challenge and power. Father, help me understand this. Help me discern this. Help me know what I should be doing. I know there's a way that you want me to live, and I want to live a way that glorifies and honors you. So will you guide me, please, or give me the strength that I need to endure under this? Wait prayerfully. Prayer. I don't think the impatient person prays very much. It's just a thought. I don't know. Then finally, wait practically. Wait practically. Practically, from the same word as the word practice. You can practice patience. You can practice endurance. In Hebrews chapter 10, again, this is a church that was a struggling church, a persecuted church that needed to endure. The pastor writes to them, he says this in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 36. Hebrews 10:36. For you need endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. You need to endure. You need to endure. Build up endurance. Some of you guys are marathon runners. Some of you have done that. Big races, long races. A friend of ours back home just did 100 miles. Yeah, cool. Go him. Great. Yeah, I can't. I don't have the endurance. I can't pull it off. Now, I could. I just don't want to be uncomfortable. Clearly. Same, right? He is saying spiritually, you need endurance. You need endurance. Parents, do you make your children wait? Do you make your children wait? Yeah, sure. I just give them a phone. That's not making them wait. When mom and dad are having a conversation, do you let them interrupt you? Please stop. Make them wait. Many a times my father would say, do not interrupt when adults are speaking. Why? Because a follower of Jesus Christ must have endurance to wait. If they can't wait 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, are they going to be able to wait when it really matters? Let them wait. Make them wait. Let them sit. Can they sit for 5 minutes? Can they sit for 10 minutes? Can they sit for 20 minutes? Yeah, just give them a tablet. That's not waiting. That's accommodating their comfort. That's not letting them feel the frustration. That's not letting them build up endurance. Make them wait. Build up that capacity to wait on the Lord. We all need to do it. Put your phone away. Just put it away. He's lost his mind. You need to increase your capacity to endure hardship and trial and pain. The judge is watching. The judge is waiting. Do things like serve. Serve others. Don't serve when it's convenient. Serve when it costs you. Serve when you're actually scheduled on the calendar to serve and something else sounds more fun comes up. No, I said I would do this. I'm going to do this. Serve in places where it calls for patience so that you can grow in patience. Be generous with your resources so that you can grow in patience. Here's an easy thing. This is easy and it's cheap. This is good. Okay, ready? Take a cold shower. Now he's really lost his mind. Do your shower thing, okay? And then at the very end, take the water, turn it all the way to cold. Stand there for 10 seconds. Force yourself to stand. No, don't do this in the shower like. No. Stand there. Let the cold water hit you. Be uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable for 10 seconds. Then make it 15 seconds. Then make it 20 seconds. There's a mental thing that you are developing, a will to endure that you don't have. And so when God asks you to do things, you don't do them because then you're going to be uncomfortable. There is no patience apart from suffering, and there is no path without pain, and there's no pain without promise. You have to. Try it. Just try it. See if you can work your way up to a minute. Give it a shot. Give it a shot. Huh? Cold showers. Practically practice it. When I was reading Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Great book. Oh, someone asked, did you fix the washer? I did fix the washer. It did work. I want credit for that one too. When I was sitting, I was reading. The story is of an Alabama lawyer in 1935 named Atticus Finch, and he has two kids, Jem and Scout. Jem is 13, 12-year-old boy. Scout's a 9-year-old girl. And he chooses to litigate and defend a black man in Alabama who's accused of raping a white girl. Okay, lots of drama involved through the perspective of Scout. And as a result, there's lots of rumors and comments that go around town about Atticus and about his family. And his kids, young kids, now have to endure this drama. They live in the fishbowl. And one particular older woman named Mrs. Dubose is not very patient with Atticus and says lots of mean things about Atticus, especially to his kids. And so Jem, the young boy, takes his sister's baton and butchers her flower garden. Just goes to town on it. Because she should know better, that old lady. And he goes home. Atticus walks in the door with the broken baton and the flowers. Are you responsible for this? Yes. She was saying mean things about you. Well, she's an old sick woman. For penance, Jem had to spend 2 hours every day at the old woman's house reading to her. After school, 6 days a week, go and read for 2 hours every day. Are you serious? Yeah, that's what you're going to go do. And so he goes after school. He reads Ivanhoe. His sister goes along. And the woman is mean and crotchety and grumpy and stinky, and her dentures are falling out, and she says mean things, and she's not fun to be around, and she has these angry fits where and sometimes she's just ignoring them altogether, not even paying attention during the reading. And at one point, Scout thinks that the time's getting even longer. Like, it's supposed to be 2 hours, and the alarm goes off, and they're ushered off, and they go home. But it keeps getting longer and longer and longer. And finally, they've paid their dues. Jem read for his time. It was a month. And he's set free. Free to be done with it. Well, at one moment, word comes to Atticus that he needs to go to Mrs. Dubose's house. And he walks in, and he comes back a couple hours later. Jem says, what was that all about? She's dead, son, said Atticus. She died a few minutes ago. Oh, well is right, said Atticus. She's not suffering anymore. She was sick for a long time, son. Didn't you know what her fits were about? Jem shook his head. You see, Mrs. Dubose was a morphine addict. She took it as a painkiller for years, and the doctor put her on it. But she spent the rest of her life on it and died without so much agony. And would have died without so much agony, but she was too contrary. Sir? Atticus said, just before your escapade with the flowers, she called me to make her will. Dr. Reynolds told her that she only had a few months left. Her business affairs were in perfect order, but she said, there's still one thing left out of order. What's that? Jem was perplexed. She said that she was going to leave this world beholden to nothing and nobody. Jem, when you're as sick as she was, it's all right to take anything to make it easier, but it wasn't all right for her. She said she meant to break herself of it before she died. And that's what she did. You mean that's what her fits were? Yes, that's what her fits were. Most of the time you were reading to her, I doubt she even heard a word that you said. Her whole mind and body were concentrated on that alarm clock. And if you hadn't fallen into her hands, I would have made you go to read to her anyways. It may have been some distraction. And there was another reason. Did she die free? Asked Jem. As a mountain air, said Atticus. She was conscious to the last, almost conscious. Conscious and cantankerous. She still disapproved heartily of my doings and said I'd probably spent the rest of my life bailing you out of jail. But she also had this box prepared for you. Atticus reached down and picked up a candy box and handed it to Jem. Jem opened the box, and inside, surrounded by wads of damp cotton, was a white, waxy flower, the one that Jem had destroyed. Jem's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Oh, that old devil! That devil! Why can't she leave me alone? In a flash, Atticus was up and standing over him. Jem buried his face in Atticus' shirt front. Shh. I think that was her way of telling you, everything's all right now. Jem, everything's all right. You know, she was a great lady. A lady? His face growing scarlet. After all the things that she said about you, a lady? She was. She had her own views about things, a lot of different than mine maybe, but son, I told you that if you hadn't lost your head, I'd have made you go read to her. I wanted you to see something about her. I wanted you to see what real courage is. Instead of getting the idea that courage is a man with a gun in his hand, it's when you know that you're licked before you go, and you begin anyways, and you see it through no matter what. You rarely win. Sometimes you do. Mrs. Dubose won. All 98 pounds of her, according to her views. She died beholden to nothing and nobody. She was the bravest person I ever knew. I wonder if there isn't anything that you'd like to get rid of before you die, before you stand before the judge. Is there something you'd say, you know what, this doesn't belong, this shouldn't be here? This impatience, it drives me to drink. This impatience, it drives me to smoke. This patience, it drives me to sex. It drives me to gluttony. It drives me to lust. This impatience, it drives me to the words I say. This impatience, it drives me to make foolish decisions. This impatience has to go. These things have to go. Or maybe you're on the other side and you know someone who's working through it. Maybe they just need you to be calm and patient as they get ready to meet their judge.
Thank you for sharing your time with us, and we'd love for the journey to continue. If you're a guest, would you consider reaching out to us? We would love to come alongside and encourage you in any way that we can. If you're someone who's joined us today and you are desperately reaching to find hope wherever you can, again, Jesus came that we would find hope. You can find hope today. If you want to send us a short note, a member of our Hope team would reach out quickly, promptly, to come alongside and see what we can do to encourage you in whatever storm you might find yourself in. That's why Jesus came. That's why we're here. Jesus said there's two ways to live your life. And a wise man, a wise woman, builds their life on Jesus' instructions. God bless.